Welcome to the Unafraid Show, aka George Wrighster's college football podcast. And the world is going crazy right now in college football, and I gotta give it to you simply and quickly the way you know what's going on. And we are going to, today, in general, we got a lot. So ESPN and Fox have now teamed up. They are now going against the world instead of going against each other. John Mateer, his Venmo account is now the subject of gambling investigations. And I'm going to tell you what the truth of this matter is and how this is all going to work out. The AP Top 25 has come out. I got my reaction to it, and we're going to talk about the past, the present, and comparing it to the Unafraid Show poll. And we got to talk about old quarterbacks in college football. And Jimbo Fisher wants to come back to the sideline. And I'm telling you, I would absolutely hire this man with one caveat. But we're going to start today. Because remember, the Unafraid Show, George Wrighster's college football podcast, is where it is show prep for everybody else. So if you want to know what's going on with all these other shows you're going to be talking about 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, that's why you come here. Make sure that you like, subscribe, get notifications, and be one of us. Leave a comment and everything else so we can get the dialogue going. All right, so first thing up, big life update here. And I want to thank you guys because this could not be possible without you guys watching the Unafraid Show, watching the interviews, everything else. So you see this CW college football crew for this season. You see that guy down there at the bottom right? That's your boy, George Wrighster. I'll be doing a studio show with Michael Bumpus and with Mr. Mike Yam as well, doing ACC Pac-12 action, and we are growing. I could not be more excited, and I want to thank you guys for that. And also a guy that you see on there, guys that I played with in the NFL too. You got Will Blackman, like him, wine sommelier as well. He'll be doing games for the ACC. And then you got Ryan Leaf, friend of mine. And I love this because Ryan has been able to do a lot of things in his career since he got out of jail and everything else. And college football legacies should not be judged by NFL outcomes. And Ryan is a good dude. I'm super happy for him, super pumped, and it is going to be a great college football season. All right, now on to the business. Next thing up. Okay, so Fox and ESPN have now joined forces. So they have created a bundle that their TV executives are going to try to pitch to sell to you. And it is going to be starting on October 2nd for $39.99 per month. So the question is, why would you pay for this? And why does this even matter? Because for so long, television executives were fighting against each other, which is exactly what the conferences are doing. SEC trying to have a bigger media rights deal than the Big Ten, trying to squish the Big 12, trying to kill the ACC, trying to minimalize the G5, all of killing the Pac 12. All of those things are happening at the same time. And when you look at the landscape, what are the networks doing? You had the Big Ten deal. Fox is partnering. You have them advertising games on NBC and Peacock and ESPN showing where games are played instead of fighting against each other. So the conferences are still doing the exact same thing that the TV executives are saying, ooh, we can either keep fighting against each other or we can team up forces for this direct to consumer service that ESPN and Fox One are combining upon. Now, Fox Corporation, who is, they're wholly owned, they own the whole thing for their direct to consumer streaming service. They announced today that their agreement is going to give me and you the opportunity to purchase both services bundled together. Now, college football was not the only factor here because the ESPN app that we've heard about, all the changes and all that stuff, and the UFC with no pay-per-view events, except for Dana White said there could be some, that it is going to give consumers access to their programming. And Fox One is going to include local stations, national news programs, and a whole lot more. So think about this. if you are a person who used to have DirecTV, Spectrum, or anything else, and the only reason why you kept those, or Hulu TV, YouTube TV, any of those, the reason why you kept them is because you wanted to see live sports. Well, now with this, you are going to be able to see like 80% of everything that you want to see as a sports fan. And then you can find, if you're an NBA fan, you can find some TNT, you can get NBA League Pass, any of those things. So it is just allowing consumers to control their pocketbook and control what they, that they don't feel like they're paying for stuff that they don't want. Because for decades, and especially the last 10 years, the companies have tried to fragment the audiences, and sports fans, like, the only thing that really keeps them going is live programming, and college sports is one of those things because we are in football season. So if you can get the NFL games on Fox, you can get Monday Night Football on ESPN, and you can get other games along the way. Oh man, for $39.99, and you can get local stations as well. This could be something that then challenges YouTube TV, Hulu, Roku, and all these rest of them in terms of their prices keep rising because the companies, the channels are charging more for their rights. Now things may be able to come back down because there's some competition. So think about this similar to cell phones. When cell phone plans first came out, crazy expensive. You got daytime minutes, you got weekend minutes, and everything. And now you can go to Mexico, Canada, all your roaming and calls are included for free now because the market has come down and there are more competition. That means the price has to lower. So this is the barriers to entry have to lower. So if you were not a person who was adapted to streaming and you want to save money and all you care about is sports, this is a potential option for you. And also it puts the Big Ten and the SEC in a different situation because with them combining, so the SEC was going to have the advantage on the ESPN app, and on the Fox app, the Big Ten was going to have the advantage. But now with them together, this creates like a super team. And this only in college football leads things more to a super conference, which is then going to, if you go back to the last live on Thursday, where I talked about the need for collective bargaining, these are the things that have to happen to point them in the right direction, to force the conferences into doing this, to having one entity to negotiate with. There you go. And people will be talking about this in a couple weeks, and then all of a sudden, oh my God, this great idea. Stay on Unafraid Show. We'll give it to you early. The next thing up, John Mateer, a man that I picked to potentially win the Heisman Trophy, a man that I tried to tell last year when he was at Washington State should be considered for the Heisman Trophy. 3,000-yard passer, 1,000-yard rusher. That's who the dude is. Transferred over to Oklahoma with Jaden Ott from Cal, the running back from Cal. Well, yesterday, there was a report that came out from Brian Aguanda. Oh, and it looked fake. And this is where we are in this point in the world now, where when you see a report, you got to be like, all right, hold up. Let's see. Is this one of them NBA Centels, fake pages? Is this a parody page? Somebody pretending to be a reporter? Well, the answer is no. So John Mateer, the new coach, the new quarterback for the Oklahoma Sooners, he had these things on his Venmo. And first of all, why are we searching through people's Venmo? This is searching through people's Venmos is actually worse than flight trackers in college football firing season. Because at least that makes some sense, right? You're trying to piece puzzles together. Well, here's what I know. So on November 20th, 2022, when John Mateer was a redshirt, and I believe up at Washington State, there was a payment to Richard Roten. That's what the person's name is on Venmo, who just so happened to be the name of an offensive lineman on his team at Washington State. Two payments. on November 20th, 2022. And the notes on it say sports gambling, parentheses, UCLA versus USC. Then the next one just says sports gambling. You don't see the amount. And people are like, see, this is verifiable proof that he was gambling on college football. Kick his ass out. Are we sure? Are we sure? Because I've seen plenty of Venmo histories. I've seen people make bets on Venmos and people do all sorts of things. And in terms of the comments on the Venmo, if you look at my Venmo, don't look at my Venmo. You are going to find, just like a whole lot of other people's, you are going to find that some of the notes, you're like, I wonder what this means. What does this emoji mean? Because it's intended, I do it on purpose to throw people off if they are looking or seeing. Now, I do push the private button, but in all actuality, how much stuff do we really intend to be private, even when that is that intention? So there are a lot of people that are pointing the finger at him and assuming guilt. I'm not that person because as a quarterback, now I have two quarterback sons. Quarterbacks generally make good decisions. Generally. To think that he would be making a bet with his teammate. First of all, a bet with your teammate is about a game you're not playing in. Or it could be on a video game. Think about that. Oh, they were playing a video game. Anything like that. Or they were watching it, anything. And the assumption is guilt. The assumption is, and truthfully, do we want to start suspending people for bets with a teammate? Hey, yo, dude, I bet you $20 I can beat you in a race. I bet you $20 on this Madden game. I bet you $20 on, hey, yo, I'm telling you, UCLA is gonna beat USC today. Bet. Okay, bet. Are we really doing this? Yes, it was dumb for making it public, but there is no way to prove what happened from the receipts unless the recipient, Mr. Richard Roten, dimes him out. Because dudes, especially college guys, are notorious for putting embarrassing stuff in the description lines when they're sending money. John Mateer told Oklahoma he don't gamble. Pete Thamel said Oklahoma's aware. It's serious, but doubt anything comes of it. Duh. What did we really think is going to come out of this? So I hope John Mateer learned a lesson. I sent this to my kid. Put your Venmo on private. And also, don't do this, son. This is a bad idea. So anybody that is just screaming at John Mateer, I know Texas fans are hoping that he gets the death penalty in college football style and everything. Nah, man. This is going to turn out to be a nothing burger. This is just a stain. This is just a bad idea that turned poor. That's it. Like let's settle down, people. But speaking of bad press, though, I wonder if Oklahoma State fans, I wonder if Oklahoma State fans who ended a decade and a half of winning football with last year's disastrous winless year in the Big 12. And then they went to shore up the defense. They gave up 36 points a game last year. So you know who they hired? Todd Grantham. And if you are a Florida fan, you know that name because that man was blamed for everything that went wrong with that defense recently. They have blamed him in one form or another for the demise of the program under Dan Mullen, who's now over at UNLV. And it's been years since Grantham had control of a college defense. And then you think about this week, one of the most respected players currently in the NFL spoke out and blasted the job that Todd Grantham did as his defensive line coach. But his comments, I was thinking about it, is this something that Oklahoma State fans need to be worried about? Or they need to be anxious about? Is it actually a good thing? I looked at this and I was like, I don't mind Cam Jordan's comments because Cam Jordan, who plays for the Saints, talked about Todd Grantham on Teron Armstead's podcast. He said, quote, there was a game last year that I walked off in the tunnel and I made a phone call. The next day we released probably the worst D-line coach I ever had. And he said, I think it was like he was a D coordinator that was forced to deal with a position. You know, when you have a broad spectrum, and you're looking at the bigger picture, and then you deal with guys who have a very skewed focus, like all they care about is beating the man in front of them and getting to the quarterback and blah, blah, blah. And I actually thought about this. I was like, this makes sense. This makes sense. And this is exactly why sometimes you have people who talk about coaching and they're like, man, this guy needs to be a coordinator before he turns into a head coach. Mm-mm. Do you think Dabo Swinney would have been a good offensive coordinator? Because he was a wide receiver coach before he got the head coaching job at Clemson. That's not what that means. You think John Harbaugh with the Ravens, was he a position coach? No, he was a special teams coach. He was not he was a special teams coordinator, but not an offensive or a defensive coordinator. Because people think the natural progression is that. No, these are two separate jobs. This is exactly why we have seen people thrive in the offensive coordinator role or the defensive coordinator role and not do well at the CEO job. Not do well at the head coaching / CEO job. And that's why we've seen people do well at the CEO head coaching job that weren't coordinators. It is two separate skill sets. The head coach, big picture, coach to coaches, philosophy, deal with discipline, deal with culture, deal with all of those things. But play calling, play sequencing, those things are left to the professionals. Those are two separate jobs. And that's exactly why when I look at Todd Grantham over at Oklahoma State, I am not concerned by Cam Jordan's comments. In fact, I'm probably more encouraged by them. Yeah. All right, next thing up. Jimbo Fisher. Jimbo Fisher, who now has collected the biggest buyout in college football history at $76 million from Texas A&M. He has said for over a year now, he made it clear, I'm thinking about getting into coaching. I got that itch, blah, blah, blah. And some people are like, I would never hire him. He checked out on Florida State, didn't get it done at Texas A&M, and then got $76 million to go off into the sunset. I would absolutely hire Jimbo Fisher again. I would. I would never give Jimbo Fisher a long-term contract. Now, mind you, he didn't twist Texas A&M's arm. They didn't have to after they gave him the first 7-year, $75 million deal. They didn't have to turn around and re-up the deal 2 years later. That's their fault. But what he can do to be my head coach, I'm paying him $1 million a year. And I will give him every incentive in the book to get up to $12, $13 million. Every incentive in the book. This is a pay for production type of situation with Jimbo. That's it. I'm not giving him no other chances, no other way. Because I do believe that he still has good value as a coach. He's won a national championship. He's recruited well. He's built a program. He's been out. And now he may understand how and be willing to handle the transfer portal class, may have a different sort of philosophy for recruiting, any of that. I would absolutely hire Jimbo Fisher. But the thing about Jimbo Fisher is this. If you're like a G5, if you're Tulane, Tulsa, Fresno State, Boise State, any of those teams trying to hire Jimbo Fisher's leaving. He's getting up out to the biggest, baddest place possible as soon as possible. But that's just what he gonna do. So that would be a little bit of a hesitation if I'm, a coach a program, but he could enter a program. Let's say that Silverfield leaves Memphis to go take a Power Four job next year. If he goes to Memphis, what? Jimbo may leave Memphis in an equal or even a better spot when he leaves after that if he does a good job. But if he's not engaged and tired, just like, I don't feel like dealing with the administration or anything like that, he's proven he'll check out on you. So, Jimbo, you got to earn your trust back. That's fair. Just like if your kids, if they break trust in the house, do you give them the same rope? Or do you say, hey, come on, we got to breadcrumb this thing out, kid. I love you. I want you here. But we got to show that, that you can be trusted. All right. Now we got to talk about the world that I'm in, quarterback dads. Because Peter Bourque, he 4-star quarterback, has committed to Michigan. 2027 commit. So, who is Michigan's hotshot quarterback for this year? Class of 2025, one of the highest paid players in college football, was committed to LSU, flipped to Michigan. He is turning 18 years old. 1 month before a 2027 quarterback, Peter Bourque. So this kid has not one, but 2 seasons left of high school football. He's about to turn 18 years old. 1 month after Bryce Underwood, who's at Michigan already. And no, we're not talking about the same situation like the kid over there at Ole Miss who got there at 16. No. So you're wondering, how does this happen? Quarterback dadding is how this happens. And the new age of holdbacks or reclassing. Because this happens when because this kid is obviously going to be old. He's going to be like 20 years old when he starts college football as a freshman in not in January when he'll probably check in 2027, January 2027, but the fall of 2027, kid will be 20 years old. And we've seen this before. It happened with Jaden Rashada. He turned 20 on the first day, on his first start as a true freshman at ASU. And quarterbacks are regularly in college football playing until they're 23, 24 years old. You got Tyler Shuck, Cam Rising, Bo Nix, but a lot of those were simply due to injuries and COVID and transfers and extra years that amounted to there. But now we are seeing parents that are holding their kids back / reclassing them because wanting an athletic advantage. But there is history. There is history that proves, there's a really good On3 article that talks about how kids that turn 19 in high school, like before their senior season is over, if they're 19, they do not go get drafted in the NFL because all these parents trying to get their kid to a great college, big name college, and then go to the NFL. Well, the NFL prospects go down with being 19. There's a whole history and data on it. Being 19 in your senior year. The Calvin Ridleys of the world, but his case was a totally different case. Those are outliers. That don't really happen very often. So the question is this good for the kid or is this bad for the kid? So there's a good book that can shape your opinion on it. Is Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. So if you've not read it and you're thinking about doing this with your kid, read this book. Because Malcolm Gladwell talks about it depends on when your birthday is. Like, for instance, I have a kid who was 13 years old, just literally turned 14. He was getting ready to he could have been going into high school at 14 years old, just turning 14 years old, right as school was starting, going to go play high school football at a big time school. Shaky situation, particularly at quarterback. And sometimes kids need more maturity. Sometimes the academic reasons. There are a whole host of reasons. Sometimes kids get hurt, family situations, all of this stuff. So I'm not begrudging anybody in this situation. I'm just telling you the reality of what we're seeing. And there are schools that actually push for kids in kindergarten to start kindergarten. 5.5 is the youngest. There are schools that push that because there's a certain level of maturity and of development that can happen, and you're less likely to end up a follower. You're more likely to be a leader. You're more likely to stand out, and all of those things. So check out the Malcolm Gladwell book. This is not a plug because I'm not getting paid for this. I just read it and enjoyed it. All right, the last thing up we got to talk about is the AP poll. We got to talk about the AP poll in college football because this is a situation where we talked about the college coaches poll last week. And I find it very, very interesting that we have voters in the AP. Now, mind you, I'm going to be pushing for an AP vote. Kevin Carter, you inspired me, sir. Man, I played against who beat me as a rookie when he was playing with the Titans at defensive end. Inspired me. He got a vote now. Reese Davis got a vote. Your boy got a vote. We need Heisman votes, AP votes, everything else because I'm one of y'all, and y'all know I bring the truth and bring the heat. So the AP poll has come out, and I knew it would look very similar to the coaches poll. But we are going to compare it to the Unafraid show poll, coaches poll, and talk about the history and everything of this. So here is the poll, the way you guys can see it if you guys are watching it on X or Twitter or YouTube as well. So here is the poll with the Unafraid show poll as well. I have been adamant that Clemson is the best team in the country this year. But for some reason, and I do think that we are having Arch Manning overload right now. Not that the kid is not going to be good or anything else, but there is Arch Manning overload, which is inflating Texas a little bit right now. Because Texas, they got the number one spot in the AP poll. They got 25 first place votes. And think about this. They are still, after that, not even a favorite to the number 3 team in the nation that they are going to be playing against, Ohio State. Ohio State is they opened up as a 3-point favorite. And now it's a 2.5-point line. So there is Texas, uh, you know, not biased, but there is Texas Arch Manning overload right now. They were a good team last year. I'm expecting them to be a good team again, but are we talking about an undefeated season? I don't think so. And we have to remember the difference between a preseason ranking and how we expect games to go. Those are two separate things. And before we get to the next point in this, I want to talk about the SEC bias in the AP poll and what came out of it. Not in the poll itself, because there were 10 SEC teams ranked, 6 Big Ten teams. The SEC homers used the preseason poll when there have been no games played as a referendum on their schedule. See, look, the SEC schedules, they are so difficult, such a gauntlet. Look, we got 10 teams ranked. The hell does that mean? Ain't nobody played a damn game yet. That is just merely hype and recruiting rankings. So you still got to go out there on the field to prove it. And that's why that Texas-Ohio State game matters the most. Because if Ohio State runs Texas off the field and then Texas goes and runs through the SEC, it's going to be hell to pay on the airwaves because you ain't going to be able to explain that away. Except for, it was just the beginning of the season. All right, next team up. The number 2 team in the AP poll, Penn State. 23 first place votes. And everybody had them in the top 5 except a man named Jerry Humphrey of AL.com, who had them 6th, which is the departure from the coaches poll. And then it actually deprived us of a 1 versus 2 matchup to start the season because AP rankings are usually the ones that are over coaches polls. Because Ohio State, you look at them at number 3. They had 11 first place votes, finished third. And to go back to Penn State for a second, people are like, oh, well, Penn State always crumbles. That's not the point of the preseason rankings. The point of the preseason rankings is, what are they returning? Returners, coaching, recruiting, all those things factor in the preseason rankings. Penn State has everything on paper in their advantage, including a good schedule. So that's why they should be up there in the upper echelon. So then you got Ohio State, 11 first place vote, and the media takes graduations and coaching's leaving a lot more serious than the coaches do, because the lowest ranking was actually from a Texas beat writer, Kirk Bowles, who had Texas at number 1. That's who Ohio State's lowest ranking was from a Texas beat writer. So then you got Clemson at number 4. They had 4 first place votes. I believe they are the best team in the country. Preseason, returning quarterback, great coaching, great defense, defensive coordinator, offensive line. The running backs are kind of questionable. 2 of the top 7 wide receivers in the country. What are we talking about? But 62 of 64 AP voters had Clemson as the top ACC team. And the lowest vote was number 9 by 3 different voters. Had them at number 9? What are we doing as ACC bias? Number 5, Georgia. They got 1 first place vote, and that was from Brett McMurphy on 3. And 11 votes were outside of the top 7, including by my guy, John Wilner. Now, those votes are an actual real statement about the state of Georgia football, considering that they've spent the last 7 years and 11 months inside the AP's top 7. Because Georgia has some question marks right now at quarterback. They are super young. So, yeah, so number 1 is very ambitious for them. Number 6, Notre Dame. Now, this is very interesting because Notre Dame got no first place votes, but they are one of the most consistent placements of any team out, well, in the AP top 10, because they only got 4 votes outside of the top 7. That is 7 less than Georgia, and almost 2/3 of the voters had Notre Dame in the 5 to 7 range. So people feel like they have a good handle on Notre Dame right now. Number 7, the Oregon Ducks. They had 1 first place vote, and that was from News 4 Jacksonville's Jamal St. Cyr. And now you got to love those Eugene to Jacksonville connections. I don't know nothing about it. But they had no votes outside of the top 10. But most of the votes were actually for the number 8 spot, which nearly was 1/3 of the voters who slotted Oregon at number 8. Then you got Alabama at number 8, because their votes were actually all over the map. Javon Edmonds of the Syracuse Post-Standard had the Crimson Tide at number 2. 1 of 9 votes for Alabama to be in the top 5. But an equal amount of voters had Alabama 10th or below. Then you got Kevin Carter, my guy of CBS Sports, Nashville, who even put them at 23rd. Now, 8 is a big deal because the lowest Alabama has been in the opening AP poll since 2009 is 5th, which is where they started last year. So Alabama people are all over the map with them. We're going to see. Number 9, LSU. They come in right there. And they are a 5-point margin that Penn State is behind Texas. Let me restate that the way you're going to understand what it is that came out. So LSU, they come in at number 9. By the exact margin, which is 5 points, that Penn State is behind Texas for the number 1 spots. So you had 7 voters who have LSU inside of the top 5, including ESPN's Reese Davis, who has them at number 4. Only 1 voter, Damian Sorladette of the Roanoke Times in Virginia, has the Tigers outside of the college football playoff positioning at number 13. You got number 10, Miami. And they actually might come in at number 10. But there is a huge drop-off in voter confidence behind LSU for this number 10 spot, because the gap between LSU at 9 and Miami at 10 is almost the same size as the gap between Texas at number 1 and Oregon at number 7. Now, Miami's highest vote was number 4 from Brian Forseca out of New Jersey. But 9 voters had Miami outside of the top 15. And Damian Sordet, Sordelet didn't rank them at all. Do you realize how crazy that is? Miami didn't get ranked at all. Then you look at number 11 through 15. You got Arizona State, Illinois, South Carolina, Michigan, and Florida. Now, everybody knows how I feel about Arizona State. You see it in the Unafraid Show poll. You know how I feel about South Carolina and Michigan and Florida. Now, Arizona State was included on 63 of 64 ballots. Weren't they on all 64? Anyways, and their highest preseason ranking since 1998. Illinois comes in at number 12, despite almost 2/3 of the voters having them outside of the top 12. And then you have 5 AP voters who left them outside of the top 25 altogether. Like, what are you talking about? 16 returning starters? And then one of their 2 top 9 votes came from their actual beat writer, Bob Asmussen. Bob Asmussen and South Carolina. When you look at them, they have 2 interesting national voices that left them off their top 25 altogether: Reese Davis and Brett McMurphy. Now, I think that this team is going to be good, but they were the darlings of last year, and can they repeat it? Now, Michigan, they had people slot them in every single spot from number 9 all the way to 21. And half of the voters putting the Wolverines between 14 and 17. And then Florida over there at 15 with 16 voters thinking that they actually might be a CFP team this year. And 9 voters left them out of the top 25 altogether. So this is why preseason rankings are all over the place, because there is no consensus. So then you look at 16 through 20. SMU, Kansas State, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Indiana. 63 of 63 ballots, 63 of 64, ballots, had SMU on the ballot. But only 5 voters are actually thinking that they're even worthy of being inside the top 12 at all. And that's exactly where they finished in 2024. You had Bob Ballou and Kirk Bowles, who are both based out of Austin, Texas, who didn't even think that. Then you got Kansas State, who is my pick to win the Big 12, and almost a third of the voters have the Wildcats in their top 15. But my guy, John Wilner, is one of 5 voters who don't even think that they're a top 25 team at all. John, what are we doing, fam? Oklahoma at 17. Now, this is a huge departure from the coaches poll, which had the Sooners at 26. Now, 11 voters have Oklahoma in the top 12 after a 6-6 season. And then you got a man out of Dayton, Ohio, Mr. David Jablonski, who has them at number 8 overall. And one of his 6 SEC teams in the top 13. He got 6 SEC teams in the top 13. What are we doing, fam? In fact, his number 13 vote went to Texas A&M, who comes in at 19 in the AP poll. You know that that Greg Sankey is sending Christmas cards and holiday messages and well wishes to David Jablonski and his ballot. Then you got Indiana. They come in at number 20 with only 1 voter, Andy Yamashita of the Seattle Times, picking them inside of the top 12. Now we're going to finish up with 21 through 25. You got Ole Miss, who I do not have ranked, Iowa State, who I have ranked higher, Texas Tech, and Tennessee, who I do not have ranked, and Boise State. Because you have Brian Fonseca and Craig Stevenson. They gave Lane Kiffin a top, think about this. They gave him a top 12 vote, but 14 voters left Ole Miss off their top 25 altogether. Iowa State came in with 1 win short of making the college football playoff last year. And only Kirk Bowles, with an 11th place vote, thinks that they might even make a leap in the top 20, in 2025. Texas Tech, they weren't able to impress almost a third of the voters with their resources. 19 writers left them off their ballot altogether, but 3 had them inside of the top 12. John Wilner put them at number 11. Tennessee, CFP team last year, lost Nico Iamaleava, lost Squirrel Wright, lost guys to the draft. And half the voters left them off their ballots completely, including your boy. but they did get 3 top 12 votes. How does this make sense? And the final 2024 college football playoff participant in the top 25 was Boise State. And you saw 11 writers that actually gave Boise State the 25th spot overall. That feels like a token vote. Come on, man. Then we got to talk about the stuff like you got BYU at 26, Utah at 27, and they were left off of 49 and 44 ballots. Now, BYU I'm cool with. Utah, a whole different story. But that don't matter because one writer had them ranked so high that they almost made the top 25. Chad Bishop of the Atlanta Journal-Constitutional had a wild top 25 preseason ballot. BYU at 8, Utah at 11. I think he's just trying to mess the whole thing up. And then when he was the only writer of the 64 to leave ASU off and SMU, he had 15 different picks that were considered extreme. That means 5 or more spots away from the aggregate. Now, I'm not mad at that in the preseason because there should be some distortion because we don't know what these teams are. Come on, man. All right. Another thing is that USC got left off of the AP top 25. I've seen people have them inside the top 10 at number 11 and everything else. And this is the first time since 2019 and only the second time since 2001 because you got Clay Helton when he was over at USC because he got to coach another 8 games after being unranked going into 2019. And even though he went 6-2, program confidence was then so low that he had to go. Now, will Lincoln Riley be held to the same standard or will the contract keep him there? Now, I do want to talk about Ralph Russo because you probably have not heard about them because this dude is a first-time voter. And I love what Ralph Russo is doing because after running the AP poll for the last 20 years, he wrote a great article in The Athletic talking about what he learned in his time running the poll. And he outlined his philosophy going into this year as a voter and his strategy. He said he's a Moneyball fan and he likes advanced metrics and he wants to use the 4 prominent computer rankings. He said he created a top 40 from that and then broke them into tiers of 5 to 8 based upon the range of ranking. And then he included Bill Connolly's power ranking data, blue chip rankings from 247, but he said he didn't overthink the schedules. And he doesn't believe that ranking Penn State above Ohio State is necessarily a prediction for what will happen in that team. And the result of that is that Russo's poll featured 10 teams that were considered extreme variations from the aggregate, including Alabama at 3, SMU at 24, but 23 of the 25 teams that made the AP poll were on Russo's ballot. The only ones that weren't were Iowa State and Tennessee, which is honestly pretty reasonable. Now, I will say every AP voter should aspire to this sort of transparency and give the secret sauce to my rankings away every single week. Because when the rankings come in during the season, when the Unafraid show, George Wrighster rankings come out every single week, you will see the variation and understand why. Because I break it down for you. It is about schedule play, dominance, and quality wins. That's how we rank them. But you guys, be one of us here on the Unafraid show. Thank you for watching. I'm George Wrighster. Peace out. Catch you guys later.